Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 14 of our reading of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone 26 Unforgettable Explorations into the Realm of the Supernatural, adapted by Walter B. Gibson. Now, we're going to go over the copyright information, which will be on your screen right now. We have here, it says, Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone, copyright 1963 by Cayuga Productions Incorporated, and Rod Serling's Twilight Zone Revisited, copyright 1964 by Cayuga Productions Incorporated, all rights reserved. This 1983 production is published by Bonanza Books, and distributed by Outlet Book Company, Incorporated, a Random House company. This book was previously published as two separate works entitled Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone and Rod Serling's Twilight Zone Revisited. Printed and bound in the United States of America. This gives the Library of Congress number, the ISBN, and all the poignant information. Okay. In the last part, they hung sheets and pillowcases out all the windows, looking for the secret door to find a way to break the curse on the castle. They had witnessed all these strange things, and they set out to find the secret room. However, the caretaker found out and got mad and evicted most everybody. But now we're going to continue and go from there. Helene is kind of upset that Woodrow vanished, and we're going to find out stuff. Okay. Boyce went to the telephone. While he was gone, Helene turned to Woodrow with an accusing glare and demanded, Where were you while everyone was being ordered to get out? Making the rounds, replied Woodrow calmly, taking pictures of the castle from every angle. He brought some rolls of film from his pocket and handed them to Moorcroft. Have these developed, continued Woodrow, and add them to the archives of Seven Towers. They will definitely prove what I am sure I saw while I was taking the pictures. And what did you see? Asked Moorcroft eagerly. A towel hanging from every window. I studied every section of the castle, carefully as I took the pictures. None of the windows can possibly belong to a secret chamber. Good, Moorcroft added. That should help soothe Boyce's worries, but I wouldn't talk to him about the curse until he is in a calmer mood. Helene decided to go along with Moorcroft's policy since he seemed sincerely interested in Boyce's welfare. As the afternoon progressed, Boyce became impatient, wondering why his solicitor had not come from Yarwick, bringing the final papers from the financial corporation. Helene, too, was self-assured as ever, talked Boyce into a game of billiards. Helene and Cynthia sat by and watched the match until Boyce's petulance reached the breaking point. I'm going to talk to the servants, he decided, and have them prepare dinner. We can't wait all night for my solicitor to show up, but until he does, we won't know when your car will get here either. After Boyce left, Woodrow put his cue on the rack and suggested, Now about the three of us going up to the top of the Norman Keep to see the sunset. To see the sunset? I can take some good color photos with the camera. Not me, interposed Cynthia with a shudder. It's beginning to grow dark, and I don't want to run into old Beardy again. Let's go into the library and talk to Professor Moorcroft, said Helene. Woodrow hooked the camera strap over his shoulder and started off, alone, in the direction of the great tower. The route he followed was the very one the girls had taken to their rooms the night before. Woodrow passed Helene's door, where she had heard the phantom carpenters building their invisible scaffold. He came to a spot where Cynthia had seen old Beardy walk by and continued on to the far end of the passage, where the glowing ghost had first appeared. There, in the gathering dimness, Woodrow took the stairs to the higher floor, where Moorcroft had tracked the tramping footbeats of the unseen men-at-arms. Then, instead of continuing on to the Norman Keep, Woodrow paused beneath an arched opening that connected two sections of the castle. All about was solid masonry of closely fitted stone. Woodrow inserted a flashbulb in his camera and shot a close-up of the archway. He followed that with another from a different angle. Next, he began tapping the wall and running his fingers along the crevices as though hoping to discover something. As Woodrow crouched in the thickening gloom, his keen ear trained to detect stealthy sounds in the jungle, caught a slight stir from the passage alongside him. He whipped about and saw a white face in the shadows, its lips spread in a grim, challenging grin. Woodrow laughed gruffly. "Hello," he said. "I rather expected you to show up here." It was no ghost. It was James Boyce. His sickly smile was forced, but he managed to back it with a show of indignation. "You put them up to that window trick," he said accusingly. "It wasn't like Paul Corley to take the blame without an argument, so I finally figured he was covering for someone, except for Moorcroft. You were the only man who stayed around and tried to bluff me. You, with that cool way of yours, and that camera you carry. Now, tell me, what are you trying to find?" "The secret chamber," returned Woodrow bluntly. It hasn't any windows, so it must be deep in the castle walls themselves. All the ghostly manifestations streamed from here, so this must be the place." Boyce's short laugh sounded hollow beneath the archway. "Suppose I tell you that the castle has no secret chamber?" "I wouldn't believe you, Boyce," Woodrow replied calmly. "I would start to take the castle apart stone by stone, beginning with this archway." "A good idea, Woodrow," Boyce remarked sarcastically. "Why not talk with the Midland Financial Group before they turned the castle over to the Preservation League?" "I did, and they have turned over the castle to me instead. That is why your solicitor has failed to show up with the final papers." Boyce's eyes narrowed to slits as he groped for words. You can't. No, they can't allow it. No one has the right to betray a secret belonging only to the descendant of Sieur Dubois." "No one will betray it," rejoined Woodrow coolly. "I simply used part of the $1 million I made from Borneo rubber plantations to buy out the Midlands estate and home financiers and reclaim my family inheritance." "Your family inheritance?" "Yes. The Boyers aren't the only descendants of Sieur Dubois who changed their name, you know. One branch adopted the name of Wood, the literal translation of the French word Boyce. One member of that group married into a family called Rowe, and the name became Wood Rowe, with a later generation migrating to Australia, where hyphenated names are not as popular as here in England, and was simplified to Woodrow. Then you are actually my distant cousin, claimant to Seven Towers. "More than that, Cousin Jim," interposed Woodrow sharply. "I have records to prove that a generation back this castle should have gone to a member of the Woodrow family, not to the Boyce who later left it to you. I am the real master of Seven Towers." His eyes still narrowed and his forced smile tensed. Boyce realized that Woodrow could be telling him the truth. "So, you see," sneered Woodrow, "it is I who should be giving you the answer to the riddle of Seven Towers and the true story of the family curse. Not the other way around, but rather than have you thrown out as a usurper, I am willing to let you fulfill the pledge you must have made when you were told the castle secret, namely to pass it along to the rightful descendant of Sieur Dubois." Boyce's whitened lips went tight, as though in absolute refusal. "It's either now or later, Cousin Jim," Woodrow said. "If you don't tell me the secret, I won't be sworn to keep it when I do uncover it." "All right, Cousin Gordon," Boyce retorted suddenly. "You win, but you're asking for it, you know, something that will really shock you." "I'm used to shockers, Cousin Jim. I've met up with headhunters, remember? And I've given them rough punishment in return. Don't forget there is a curse that goes with this family secret, And that curse will become mine instead of yours, chuckled Woodrow. I'm helping you out from under, Cousin Jem. Very well, then, said Boyce. Do you have a flashlight? Woodrow produced one and turned it on. Boyce gestured for him to focus it on the side wall of the arch. There, in the glow, Boyce probed the crevice with his finger. Finding the spaces between two special stones, they were linked by some hidden mechanism that required double pressure. For a muffled click came from within the masonry. Boyce paused, brought out a flashlight and said, Now you try it, Woodrow. I mean, Cousin Gordon. Woodrow copied Boyce's probe and was rewarded by the same click. Boyce told him tentatively, Now press steadily against the stonework itself. Woodrow pressed. An upright segment of the solid wall swung downward, inward, showing jagged edges where the stonework had fitted to exactitude. 5 feet in height and 3 feet in width, forming a thick slab hinged at the bottom and governed by a hidden counterweight below it. It finally reached the horizontal, held there by the pressure of Woodrow's outstretched hand. The end of the slab settled upon a broad stone step that marked the bottom of a steep stairwell hewn in the castle wall itself. I was sure this would be it, admitted Woodrow in a satisfied tone. This is where the old Saxon tower meets the Norman keep. The walls here must be doubly thick. He stooped to go through the opening where the lowered slab was like a drawbridge to the steps beyond. Then he drew back, smiling. After you, Cousin Jem, Woodrow invited. In the glare of the flashlight, Boyce's return smile was bitter, as though recognizing Woodrow's mistrust. Obligingly, Boyce crossed the 5-foot bridge, stamping it to assure Woodrow that it was solid and secure. Woodrow followed and squeezed himself alongside of Boyce. Go up one step, urged Boyce, and watch over my shoulder. You will see how simply it operates from this side. Woodrow moved upward, and Boyce followed far enough to relieve the hinged slab of his weight. Slowly the stone barrier rose of its own accord, far enough for Boyce to bring his hand beneath it and push it at arm's length into the original upright position in the wall. There was a click as it jammed there, but there was a wide space at the upper edge here on the inside of the wall. You simply work your fingers in there, stated Boyce in a subdued tone, and pull down. That lowers it again. It can't go wrong. Woodrow nodded and gave an upward wave of his flashlight. All right, now let's go. He stopped short, his words spoken in a normal tone, but sounded like a shout in these stony confines. He reduced his voice to a mere whisper, the way Boyce had. Let's go on up. I want to see that secret chamber. Boyce turned his own flashlight upward and pressed on, past Woodrow, who followed closely. The stairway came to an abrupt end beneath a stone ceiling that represented another slab. This one was different from the one below. Instead of being hinged, it simply slid horizontally, like a sliding drawer. Its mechanism was smooth, however, for it glided noiselessly into the wall, revealing a blackened gap above. This slab works only from beneath, stated Boyce in his strained whisper. When closed, its ends are directly below the upright walls, so there is no way to open it from above. Prepare yourself for the worst. There was a quiver in Boyce's whisper that Woodrow realized was inspired by sheer stark dread. Boyce continued up the stairs, beckoning Woodrow along. Then the two cousins were standing side by side, playing their flashlights upon a grisly scene. Sprawled about a squarish stone-walled room were whitened figures, partly clad in armor like yeomen, who had been making ready for a last assault upon a foe. Scattered about were helmets and gauntlets, which had been not yet put on, hence the heads and hands of the fighting men were fully in view, nearly a dozen in all. Those heads were grinning skulls. The heads were bony skeletal fingers, and some dangling from the hilts of rusted in the hilts, some dangled in the hilts of rusted swords that lay bluntly and broken on the stone floor, beside their hapless owners. One figure alone was clad in complete armor, but the visor of his helmet was partially lifted, and hollow eye sockets glared like blackened orbs from the whitened skull within. It was to that figure that Boyce gestured first. Sir Cedric Shapley, Boyce's whisper was full of horror. And his loyal men-at-arms. Our mutual ancestor, Sir Reginald Dubois, hid them here, so that they would not be found if their enemies searched the castle. He slid the stone slab shut from beneath, then conveniently forgot to return and open it. Coldly, Woodrow studied the sprawled figures. Their broken, blunted swords indicated that they had tried to pry open the thick slab that imprisoned them before death overtook them. Probably they had already been weakened from starvation when the lack of air had resulted in their suffocation, for they had died while rallying to their leader's call in a last effort to mount guard. The ghosts of these men, continued Boyce in a hushed tone, are the marchers who have tramped through the castle ever since. They must have made the last vow to avenge themselves in death after they had failed in life, for they drove Sir Reginald to madness and doom. He could imprison their bodies, but not their spirits. Woodrow gave a side glance and saw that Boyce's eyes were nearly shut, his face whiter than ever. Calmly, Woodrow focused his camera on the gruesome death scene of centuries ago and took a flash picture. And then he asked, How often have you come up here, Cousin Jim?" "Only once before," returned Boyce. "When the secret was revealed to me, once was enough, but I promised to pass it along when the appointed time arrived. That I have done just now." "But you would have preferred to have let the secret die with you." "Absolutely, and I would have, if you hadn't insisted on my revealing it to you. Remember, the portent of doom has declared itself again. Once old Beardy walked last night, and invisible carpenters built their gallows this morning." "And you actually believe in all that nonsense?" "Yes. What else could explain the strange things that happen? Imagination is easy for people to think they hear and see things in an old castle. As for these," Woodrow gestured to the armored skeletons, "Sir Reginald Dubois was smart to get rid of his enemies in a quiet, inexpensive way that no one would guess. He just happened to go crazy and tell his secret later. So ever since, his gullible heirs have taken it seriously. Now that I'm taking over," he went on, "I'll have this rubbish cleared out, and I'll turn Seven Towers into a real show place, with its haunted chamber as a top attraction. So come along, Cousin Jim, or I may get absent-minded and slide the slab shut, leaving you up here with Sir Cedric and his merry men." Woodrow was already starting down the stone stairs in a panic. Boyce scrambled after him, only to have Woodrow snap a flash picture squarely in his face, recording all the terror that was etched there. While Boyce blinked and rubbed his eyes, Woodrow jeered. "Slide the slab shut yourself, then, if you don't trust me." Boyce obeyed and hurried down to join Woodrow, who was already reaching for the finger space at the top of the hinged block at the bottom of the steps. He found it below shoulder level, so he went down one step and was about to go another when Boyce called in a hoarse whisper, "Woodrow, don't go another step." "What do you mean?" snapped Woodrow. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you, don't take another step." "I own this castle," Woodrow said angrily, "and I'll—" Suddenly Woodrow was clawing wildly in mid-air, seeking a finger hold in the crevice opposite, but his fingertips could not sustain the weight of his burly body, which one step more would have plunged downward into a sheer void. From the depths of the 60-foot shaft came back a trailing cry that was broken once, then again, and finally silence as Woodrow's falling, thrashing form hit projecting stone along the way. A spinning streak of light accompanied him, his flashlight, then a distant splash from the bottom of the pit, and the glow was swallowed with it. From one step above the brink, Boyce pointed his own light downward. He saw the swirl of an ugly, murky current where the channel from the river flowed beneath the castle and on out to the moat. Where no head bobbed above the surface, Boyce knew that those eddies had swept the victim along. Even worse than the fearful drop was the jutting rocks that Sir Reginald Dubois, or one of his unlikely forebears, had left there for the discomfort of any meddlers who sought the secret chamber and blundered down the open shaft instead. They studded the route like the pins of a giant board game, making it impossible to miss. Boyce had intended to show the death shaft to Woodrow on their way out, but the new owner of Seven Towers had not waited long enough to learn that added secret of the castle. Now Boyce numbly opened the stone block across from the steps and emerged into the archway, where he closed the tight-fitting wall behind him. When he reached the ground floor of the castle, he found it deserted, so he went outdoors. There, the solicitor had arrived from Yarwick, and so had the car that was to take Helene and Cynthia back to London. But the two girls were still there, looking up at the high tower of the Norman keep, which was sharply etched against the fading sunset. They were calling goodbye to Gordon Woodrow, but they were receiving no answer. That brought a worried headshake from Cyril Moorcroft, who was standing by. Moorcroft turned and spoke to Boyce as he approached. Woodrow told the girls that he was going to the tower, explained Moorcroft, to take some pictures of the sunset, but when he was up there earlier, he insisted upon leaning against those loose, wobbly merlons. If he tried that foolhardy stunt again, chances are we shall find him in the moat, and I think we shall start looking right now. Boyce gave immediate agreement. I'll summon the servants, he said. They found Woodrow's body a few hours later under the glare of automobile headlights, the powerful electric lanterns. It was near the outlet of the moat where the strong current had carried it. From the bruises on his head and the twisted condition of his limbs, it was assumed that he had struck some of the outer bastion of the huge tower during his long fall. At the coroner's inquest held in Yarwick, the verdict was death by misadventure. Testimony given by Helene, Cynthia, and Moorcroft was sustained by the recovery of Woodrow's camera with his body. Examination of the film showed that 4 pictures had been taken. The water had ruined the negatives, so there were no more than a blur, but it seemed obvious that Woodrow had been taking pictures of the sunset, when he must have leaned too heavily on a merlon. Nobody asked James Boyce where he had been while Woodrow was up in the tower, for Boyce was a big loser by Woodrow's death. It turned out that Woodrow had bought Seven Towers at a higher price than the League for Preservation of Historical Sites had offered. Because Woodrow's death, the sale was nullified, and the League acquired the castle at the original figures. Visitors to Seven Towers now will find that it is a national museum, with Cyril Moorcroft as its resident curator. He knows everything about the castle's history and can trace the genealogy of its owners from the original Sieur Dubois on down, Moorcroft is convinced that James Boyce escaped the curse of Seven Towers because he was never the true master of the castle. The title belongs to Gordon Woodrow, both by right of heritage and purchase at the time when Old Beardy just last walked and the Phantom Carpenters built their invisible scaffold. So it was Woodrow's death and those weird happenings had presaged. Now that Seven Towers has passed from its hereditary line, the curse must have been lifted, for Old Beardy has made no new appearances, nor have the unseen carpenters rendered another audition. But on occasion, nights when all is very quiet, the tramp of phantom men at arms can still be heard. Always. Moorcroft listens, for, as he likes to relate, he once tracked those ghostly marchers back to their starting point, hoping he might discover a secret chamber. But Moorcroft has given up that quest. Among his prized possessions is a set of photographs taken by Woodward only a few hours before he met his doom. Those pictures show every window of Seven Towers flaunting towel pillowcase, or some equivalent emblem, accounting for every room in the castle. So, whatever doubts may surround the legend of Seven Towers, Cyril Moorcroft is definitely positive of 2 points. One, that Gordon Woodrow fell to his death from the parapet of the Norman Keep, and the other, that the castle has no secret chamber. And we're going to end it here, and we're going to start reading The Tiger God when next we pick this up. Anyways, we have been reading from Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, 26 unforgettable explorations into the realm of the supernatural. This was adapted by Walter P. Gibson. If you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way, or if you want to join the Discord server, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.